It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. Before we get started, do please hit that share button so we can educate more patriots across the country. All right, we're kicking things off with our good friend, Vicki McKenna, and the very popular Culture Cast segment. Vicki, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
The camo's back. My whole world makes sense.
It's not camo.
Isn't it?
It's OD green.
Oh, well,
it's just
okay.
OD green.
I was going to say, my world makes sense again.
So, I wish we could just talk about fashion.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That we're going to get into today.
We got some creepy stories for you today, starting with, we shouldn't be surprised, right? A Texas teacher is now claiming that 20 of her fourth graders out of 32 identify as LGBTQ. Now, this is some kind of a revelation, right? See, all this progressivism, and now the vast majority of our kids are really LGBTQ, and we didn't know it until now. How do you make this? We knew this was coming.
Well, first off, you knew it was coming. Secondly, if there was any doubt that kids are being groomed into very radical and deviant sexuality at ever younger ages, here it is. You got a teacher, you got a radical activist teacher who is encouraging her students in her class to declare themselves alt-sexual in some way. And when you're in fourth grade, that's 9 and 10 years old. 9 and 10 years old. They have no idea what they're talking about. They are being encouraged by their teacher, and they are acceding to their teacher's wishes because they seek approval of an adult, because that's what 9 and 10-year-olds do. This is insidious. It is widespread. Lest anyone think that this is not in their school. It's in your school. It just is. What I can't believe, Duke, is that there is not a nation of parents acting almost as an army, storming into these classrooms to put an end to this, because your kids are the ones that are being warped, and your kids are the ones that are coming out of this with gender confusion and potentially mental illness. And hopefully not, but perhaps suicidal ideation, which we actually have as a situation in a Wisconsin school. So I'm not surprised, but I'm disgusted. I'm even more disgusted because the left fears nothing. Parents have been showing up at school board meetings. What is their reaction? Hey, let's radicalize more kids and make a declaration during Pride Week that 80% of a fourth grade classroom somehow understands, let alone declares themselves to be deviant sexuals.
And I think you hit on something very, very important, that the progressive left is manipulating, not educating. You could teach these kids anything, starting at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. If you start telling children from the time they show up in kindergarten that to be different is special, to be not just heterosexuality, it's discriminatory. Think about all the sexual avenues of love. Sex is love, right? Even though we're going to teach you all about anal intercourse and how to use lube, all that. Sex is love, understand that. And how can you
that doesn't really scream love, does it?
Do you not love your daddy as much as you love your mommy? Why couldn't you love all people? And so you're exactly right.
That's a good point, because if you were equating sex with love, and why don't you love your teacher?
Right.
Don't you love this counselor? It's part of this process of grooming kids to be comfortable with deviant sexuality and to have themselves experience this type of sexuality as well. What's next? And I'll tell you what's next is reducing the age of consent. That's next. Your kids are being properly groomed so that when everybody goes California and the age of consent is reduced to 13 or 12 or whatever it is, your kids will be ready. Your kids will be prepared to engage in child-adult sexual activity, and they will claim it's consensual, just like they claim it's consensual when an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old gets gender-altering therapy in the form of hormones or counseling that recommends surgery. So it's coming, folks. The idea that somehow, well, if I just go to a school board meeting or we, elect a couple of extra people on the school board, this will change. It won't. This is the last and greatest battleground that the left is going to engage. Everything else that they have done has failed. So far, they've been winning when it comes to education.
You are not going about the business of literally sexually licensing children as young as 6 and 7. You do not do that and then turn around and tell those kids, oh, but all the sexual feelings we've taught you, all the sexual arguments we've made on your behalf, don't worry about that for another 10 years. It doesn't work that way. And we actually have a quote from the teacher. Quote, here it is. I feel that it is inappropriate to call our parade this morning a wellness walk, right? So the school tried to cover up the name of their pride parade by calling it a wellness walk to avoid parent flack. And so the teacher says, I feel that it's inappropriate to call our parade this morning a wellness walk at all. While I understand that wellness walk is something that was previously in motion to promote health and fitness and is something we want to continue, it really takes away from the experience of celebrating pride to couple the two. The first pride was a riot. It is not enough to just welcome, love, and celebrate. Queer foix, F-O-I-X, I'm not even sure how you pronounce that. Your allyship should always lead you to activism, speaking up and fighting for what is right, even when it feels uncomfortable. We can't choose in and out of our protest spaces.
Remember what we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, when parents were told in the Eau Claire schools they have to earn information about their children. Your children are not your children. Your children are our children. You had the Ozaukee Democrats in the state of Wisconsin essentially declare that in an education manifesto. So again, I don't know why anybody thinks that they are going to be able to escape this, why they think their school is just going to be the one in the entire country that's different. It isn't. Get your kids out of these public schools.
I was in Eau Claire yesterday doing a talk, and we had 250 people there in that room. Parents are starting to pay attention. Before I go, let me show you the last part of that quote that we didn't read. This is the teacher. Out of the 32 students that I teach, 20 of them are LGBTQIA+, and they have come out to me. Notice that. They've come out to her, not to the class, not to the teachers, and not to the schools. I feel
not
that
to the parents.
I feel that we need to do better for them to affirm our students. I think it would only be appropriate and right to publicly announce that we had this morning a pride parade. Our students are aware and they are paying attention.
They are 9 years old, and she is a pedosexual. That's my new word for these people. You are pedosexuals. You are freaks who want to encourage children to engage in deviant sexual activity that will harm them throughout their entire lives. It is disgusting. It is sick. It is demonic. It is purely demonic. And I mean, honestly, protect your children. If your children are exposed to this kind of thing, get your kids out of those schools ASAP. And get to church.
So appropriate that you brought up the pedosexual, because after the break here, we're going to talk about a creepy, creepy fella who was a teacher and is now running for school board.
With all the censorship taking place on social media platforms, we've made it easy to keep up with your favorite content. Simply download the Freedom Project Media app in your app store. Get access to 18 new videos a week, plus thousands of archived shows, lecture series, and educational animations. Download the Freedom Project Media app on your Apple TV, Roku, tablet, or phone, and make sure you allow for notifications to keep you informed.
All right, back with Vicki McKenna for CultureCast. Vicki, we're talking about a word that you coined called pedosexuals. And a pedosexual is somebody who's using all of this new current buzzwords and social justice enlightenment to really just groom kids for their own sexual pleasure. Speaking of the creepiest, talk about this fella from Kenosha, Wisconsin, former teacher, God help us, who now is preparing to, I think, run for a school board, and his very interesting personal media pages.
So if anyone wants to see this, and Duke, I'm not sure if you could provide a link. This was a story that was produced at KenoshaCountyEye.com, and it is about one Samuel Ruchnick. I'm not sure if you have a picture of him. He looks like a creepy perv. When you look like a creepy perv, I'm not sure what we can actually say on this podcast, but this is a guy who's posted multiple Facebook posts about his enthusiasm for incredibly deviant sexuality, his enthusiasm for the Communist Manifesto, and his wholehearted endorsement of prostitution and other types of sex work. He is running for the school board in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He is likely to win. He has the endorsement of the who's who of the labor union left. the endorsement of the teachers union, the endorsement of most of the well-known Democrats in the area. And this is a guy who says he wants to bring his perspective to the school board. If I may just read a statement, sex work is real work, and it's good work. And it should be respected as much as any other profession. So I stand by strippers and cam girls and guys and prostitutes and openly sexual people of all ages, races, status. Without these people doing what they do, the world could be more sexually aggressive than it already is. Be glad there are people out there doing this work. It's harder than you think and more good than you know. Hashtag sex work is real work.
So,
I mean, this is a guy who's cruising for hookers in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and this is a selling point.
For a guy who's complaining about sexual aggression that needs to be taken off, he has some pretty interesting dietary requirements.
Can we say it?
Yes.
I mean, we can say it. I'll say it. I mean,
We can say it.
This is something that's supposed to be a selling point for a man to be I guess he's a man. I don't know, Duke. I'm not a biologist, but he think he's a man. He puts a post up that says on the health benefits of ingesting vaginal bacteria.
Yep.
I'm just going to stop there because you can fill in the blanks.
I'll pick up that ball. I'll be glad to do that. So here's a guy now whose entire premise is in this social media post that he is a connoisseur of vaginal bacteria and that ingesting it orally is some kind of weird probiotic for him. This is the guy now do you wonder now why he stands up for and stands by sex workers?
No, you can't wonder at all once you see this. He's also an enthusiastic endorser of Drag Queen's Story Hour. He doesn't have any problems with the Communist Manifesto, thinks it's an interesting read and some really good ideas contained there that we should take a look at. And it's just not fair to dismiss it out of hand. Again, he's endorsed by all of the who's who of the left. The Wisconsin Progress, Working Families Parties, Senator Bob Wirtz, you got one of the old school Democrats, all of the unions, including the teachers union, the AFL-CIO, the IBEW. I'm not sure what electricians have, why they have, some kind of, dog in this race here, but apparently they decided to throw in for this guy as well. His posts are disgusting. They're pornographic. They're vile. They're sort of stomach, churning. When you look at them, he is someone who likes to pose in particular poses that kind of make you want to crawl out of your skin. But you know what? I was told by people who live in Kenosha, he has a very good chance of winning this race unless people learn about him and rally candidates against him. And that's unlikely because the elections are so soon.
The way he talks about the benefits of ingesting aspects of female biology makes me think that it puts the lotion on or it gets the hose. All right? I mean, that's the kind of Buffalo Bob in a school board. All right, Vicki.
Well, he was a teacher too, so I wonder how many kids were already exposed to this kind of material and this kind of creepy thinking. Man, this is again, they're not ashamed. The Democrats aren't ashamed to endorse him. If a Republican had done this, if a conservative or a moderate had done this, and this made the news, that person would have been forced to withdraw. All of the endorsements would have disappeared in a second. No self-respecting conservative would have ever gone to the polls and voted for someone like this. But when it's a Democrat, this is, these are features, not bugs.
Yeah, and I have to say this, as unpleasant as it can be, there is no
pedosexuals.
There is no
use the word
podcast in the world that brings you this kind of information and gives you the kind of coverage of it that we do. It's not easy for us to talk about this stuff. So
it was pretty actually, and we're in our 50s.
Yeah,
this was difficult.
Oh, I mean,
and these people are actually comfortable, I guess, expressing this kind of material to young children.
That's right. And so we try to make this fun and lighthearted, but the information is what you need. This is where the whole culture is heading very rapidly. So
get your kids out of these schools.
Get your kids out right away. Thank you for your time today, Vicki McKenna. Another really interesting CultureCast.
Today's show is sponsored by our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% on all items at MyPillow.com when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. Support this show by supporting a great American company.
All right, it's time now for Trending Left. We've compiled some of the most crazy social media content making waves across the internet for your viewing pleasure. We start in Sonoma County, California, where the Office of Education has launched a video contest for 6th to 12th graders. Kids are being asked to create 30 to 60-second videos designed to convince other kids in the school to get the jab. Top prize for this propaganda is $1,500 large. That comes out of your property taxes, Mom and Dad. Let's watch the propaganda in action.
County of Sonoma VaxVid video contest. Calling all 6th to 12th graders. Create a 30 to 60 second video encouraging your peers to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Your deadline is May 9th. The prizes are $1,500 for the first place, $1,000 for the second place, and $500 for the third place.
Well, gosh, what if you're one of those really progressive kids who wants to bring masks back? No video rewards for them? Heading now to the free state of Florida, where an elementary teacher in the Charlotte County public school system thought it was really smart to post a video saying she would rather lose her job, go to jail, than follow a new state law which protects little kids from sexual indoctrination in the classroom. Parents, here's a prime example of a teacher you need to protect your kids from. Thank God for Ron DeSantis.
I just want to go ahead and state that I would rather lose my job than out one of my students to their families. Being a safe person and a safe place for kids that don't have that at home is one of the best parts of being a teacher. So yeah, I'm not doing it. I don't know. Fire me, sue me, take me to jail. I'm not doing it.
With all due respect, what the hell are you talking about? This is about not talking about anybody's sexuality until they're well beyond 3rd grade. Little kids don't need to have these discussions. Who's going to make you out anybody to anybody else? These teachers are not just stupid, they're paranoid. Moving west to Westchester, Pennsylvania, where the school board has just voted to keep a highly sexualized book called Genderqueer in the school library. If you've never seen the book, it is full-on pornographic content for little kids. It includes illustrations of young boys performing sex, oral sex, on another boy. But that's not it. You have adult men having sex in this little comic book as well. It is really graphic, and it's targeting for kids, quote unquote, who are young adolescents. According to the official school review of this book, however, it's peachy keen. Quote, there are explicit images, but in content of the memoir, they are not pornographic. Nude images, apparently even sexual nude images, in art books are considered appropriate. So the argument is by these people that watching this kind of pornography in a comic book is the same thing, as viewing the naked statue of Michelangelo's David. Big difference, though. David isn't performing fellatio on Goliath. Heading west to Seattle, where 2nd graders, that would be 8-year-olds and 7-year-olds, at an elementary school are allegedly being given assignments specifically about sexuality. Here is the transgender affirming assignment for 7-year-olds. Quote, everybody has the right to choose their own gender by listening to their heart and mind. Everyone gets to choose if they are a girl or a boy or both or neither or something else, and no one else gets to choose for them. How do you feel when someone else tells you what girls should do and boys should do? Is that my imagination, or is that individual with the flower in his hat? Is that not the slap fight love child between Will Smith and Chris Rock right there? Seems to me. Finally, let's wrap things up in Downers Grove, Illinois. Students were treated to a lesson on the 15 characteristics of white supremacy culture. But don't you dare say critical race theory is being taught in the schools. Take a look at what passes for education in schools today. Among the many things that white people are guilty of, perfectionism, a sense of urgency. Yeah, we wouldn't want ambulance drivers to have to hurry. Defensiveness, quantity over quality, worship of the written word. Yeah, reading is totally overrated. Only one right way of doing things. Paternalism, either or thinking. Oh, how dare we give students options. Power hoarding, fear of open conflict. Individualism, heaven forbid we not be collectivists, and I'm the only one. Progress is bigger, objectivity, and the right to comfort. My God, these white people are evil. And that wraps up this segment. More craziness to come in the weeks ahead. It's time for Reclaiming America with our counterculture mom, Tina Griffin. Tina, thanks for joining us this week.
Hey, thanks for having me. How you doing, Dr. Duke?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm right here in front of a typical American high school today. We got a lot to address.
I don't see any barbed wire.
Not at this one. I had to search for a while to get the right picture.
I understand completely. Speaking of high schools, schools now are lowering their standards. I didn't know you could lower them any lower due to the pandemic-related failure of education. So it's not only the schools are lowering their standards, but we now know that the Centers for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, is setting back what we expect children in terms of speech. So what we ordinarily would have expected out of a 3 or a 5-year-old, that's been pushed back because of all the mask wearing.
We've got a problem. It's in our education system. And yes, many school districts today, Dr. Duke, are lowering the standards major. Why? Because of what you just said. Kids have been wearing masks forever for the last 2 years. A lot of learning disabilities, and these challenges were created by the government. They had forced lockdowns, including remote learning, that have led to learning loss and a rise in students failing classes. This failure rate has increased 2 to 3 times, Dr. Duke, from the pre-pandemic levels. We have a major problem, a crisis on our hands.
And yesterday at my university, for the very first time in almost 2 years, there were no mask mandates. I walked into class. I did not recognize any of those kids. I had lost the ability to even, they looked like a completely brand new group of people. We've been in class since February. So it shows you how crazy it's gotten.
That's crazy. Well, I'm glad the masks are off there. We might have to just move back north to Wisconsin for at least the summer months. You know,
yeah, there you go.
I really can't push it because we moved for a reason. I don't want to freeze. But Dr. Duke, what are we going to do? Because here's the problem. The test scores in English, language arts, ELA, math have also seen a decline in remote learning in comparison to school scores, which had more in-person learning. And now I'm reading in the headline news today, there's schools again that are wanting to close down. Have you read any of that?
Yeah, and what we're going to do is what we always do. Whatever the progressives recommend, and what they recommend is just don't try to catch kids up. Don't work harder. Don't ask teachers to sacrifice more. All we'll do is we'll just expect more for kids. Dumber, dumber, dumber is the answer. Speaking of dumb, Tina, tell our listeners who Brian Houston is and why we should care.
Brian Houston, we have to pray for him. I was going to say a disaster, but that's not Christ-like. So I'm rewinding. We have to pray for this guy. I was already blasting out 3 or 4 years ago. He said some very insane things that you can get to God in 50 million different ways. There's not one true path to heaven. I'm like, who is this guy and what is he talking about? Why is he in charge of one of the largest churches around this globe, Hillsong? So the Hillsong co-founder resigns recently here after alleged inappropriate behavior. But I mean, there's a lot of proof. We can say alleged because the news says it, but there's a lot of women coming forward with proof. Infidelity has skyrocketed among Hillsong Church. It's not just him. The mega church that draws tens of thousands of people weekly to its 30 locations around the globe. And responding to the report that claimed co-founder Brian Houston had breached the church's code of conduct by engaging in inappropriate behavior with 2 women, the Hillsong board of directors confirmed by saying in a statement, "We have sadly been dealing with 2 complaints made against Pastor Brian over the last 10 years. These matters were dealt with confidentially, but the issue is that it's not just him." I mean, I also blasted out my concerns along with my team with New York pastor Carl Lenz. Same thing happened. He stepped down following revelations of an extramarital affair that happened a year and a half ago. So it's not just in Hillsong. The issue we're having, Dr. Duke, is around this globe, and it's sad because when people are trying to seek truth and go to churches that are talking about biblical topics and on fire for the Lord, they're afraid to step out and go to church because we have all of these pastors that are saying one thing on a Sunday but living a different lifestyle throughout the week. We have to pray for our pastors around America and around this globe. And if there's an issue with the pastor, and if you're watching this and you know a pastor who is doing something unbiblical, pray for them, but they should not be in that leadership position.
Well, we have an actual video from the Hillsong movie early back in 2015.
The only thing that matters about our story is everything that we do represents the heart of God.
There was this underground movement. We'd do these events and there'd be thousands turning up.
If God's hand is on something, people are going to be where he is.
When I walked into Hillsong, I knew my life was different. When I started a church, I wanted to have a church that wrote songs that influenced the way people worship.
Back in the early days, our focus was our city, and then there was this beyond factor.
Where do we go to find more information and more stuff about Tina Griffin and your ministry?
You can download the Counterculture Mom app, and in there you will see some excellent resources for homeschooling this week. Since we talked about schooling issues and the lowering the standards, my kids are homeschooled. So go into extras and freebies in the Counterculture Mom app. You will see a plethora of amazing discounts from all these ministries that we are with. And you can also find access where you can get 25% off your membership right now, right through our affiliate link, through our Counterculture Mom app. And Dr. Duke Access gives talking points that parents can have with their kids about issues like infidelity or a pastor gone wayward or making sure you're walking the straight and narrow and walking the Word of God out, the Christian walk. Dr. Duke, you and I just have to lift each other up in prayer, our ministries up in prayer, and people out there, please be praying for people in leadership positions. It is critical because Satan's on an all-out attack.
If you have a question for Dr. Duke and Katie, please send it our way by emailing askduke@fpeusa.org.
And that's going to do it for this show. I am Dr. Duke, and until I see you next time, stay educated, my friends, which pretty much means stay out of the public schools.